No other single individual towers above church history, like Flavius, Valerius, Aurelius, Constantinus, Augustus, Acca, Emperor Constantine the Great. Cult hero, church father, 13th apostle, benefactor and hijacker of the faith are adjectives that have been ascribed to this legendary enigmatic figure. As the 57th emperor of the Roman Empire, he is credited with making astronomical changes to a minority religion that was hereto ostracized, marginalized, and victimized for its anti-Roman theology. After his fabled conversion to Christianity upon the Milvian Bridge on that cold morning of 312, when Constantine looked up to the sun before battle and saw a cross of light above it with the Greek words, "By this win," Constantine commanded his troops to adorn their shields with Christian symbol and went on to victory over Maxentius. Constantine would embark on a course of action that would unite church and state in an unprecedented way that would change the course of Western history forever. Since Christianity was not an accepted religion at this point, there was very little political support for it outside of Galerius' deathbed Edict of Toleration 311 and Constantius' refusal to impose full Diocletian persecution in the West. Upon victory, Constantine would issue the Edict of Milan 313, which, while not making it the state religion, would legitimize under his patronage. But Constantine was about to inject himself into the theological arena in an unprecedented and perhaps unpalatable way. This meant that he would start to affect actual church belief. This is best observed in the adoption of the Nicene Creed in Nicaea of 325 AD. Arius, a presbyter from Alexandria, was teaching that Jesus was completely a man with no divine nature. This refuted Scripture, the church fathers, and the leading bishops of the day. It also meant that humanity could attain perfection since Jesus did himself. Within this context, the emperor, wishing unity within the church, and therefore unity also within the empire, convened the council in specific hope of resolving the issue. He provided the venue, infrastructure, and official mandate to pronounce the issue. Thus we clearly see a direct involvement in church theology. Even when the bishops couldn't resolve the issue, he added to the language of the creed, supposedly for the sake of clarification. He interjects homoousios to describe the nature of Jesus and the nature of God. Whether on the advice of his personal friend, Bishop Hosius Corboria, or his involvement in sun worship, which had similar concepts, the phrase held special attraction for him and seemed to be the logical solution. They eventually adopted this position and formally set it in as a creed, and only 2 of the 253 attending bishops did not sign. Added to the creed was a list of anathemas that consigned Arius' views as heresy. This was an interim solution to what would be an ongoing issue, also officially introducing the doctrine of the Trinity. Effectively, Arius and his supporters were instantly silenced and banished. Not only did this quell Arius, but it also opened the floodgates of imperial involvement in theological matters as that can be seen in the later 6 councils. Prior to Nicaea in 321 AD, Constantine decreed that Sunday would be observed as the official Sabbath or day of rest, as had already become the practice of the Roman Church. On this day, the magistrates were to enforce the cessation of labour across the empire. When difficulties arose in agricultural logistics, he revised this decree to allow those in agricultural pursuits to continue their work. On the surface, this change may seem rather innocuous. However, it represents a significant empire-wide change from the biblical Sabbath worship on Saturday to the adoption of the Lord's Day, a day based on pagan practices. This had significant theological and political implications. His dalliance with feast days did not end there. The Roman Church had long since accepted the practice of Easter being celebrated on a fixed Sunday, and in the first third of the year, whereas the Eastern Church wished to continue the practice of the resurrection being commemorated on the 14th of Nisan, or Passover. Again, wishing to bring uniformity and order, Constantine decreed that Easter should be celebrated according to the Roman Church. This too had far-reaching implications, as it then became the accepted practice of the Catholic Church and most churches today. In his quest to further unify and organize the religion, Constantine felt that a unified book of practices and rules should be adopted. At this time, a spectrum of views existed as to what should be comprised in this book. In time, an THCH list of 27 would be best reflected in the official canon. However, at the council, Constantine chose to adopt Eusebius' list based on the readings of Eusebius' history. Again, this did not create a closed canon. However, it did set in motion the eventual adoption of one. This meant a unified canon, but closed canon, and with it, the reduction of a range of interpretation.
The Edict of Milan in 313 soon became accepted throughout the empire in principle. Christianity was before that an ostracized minority religion whose practitioners were persecuted sporadically throughout their brief history. Under Constantine's forerunner, Diocletian, a heavy spate of persecution, including death, seizure of property, and the administering of unfair tests of loyalty, heightened hatred towards Christians. Galerius' Edict of Toleration in 311 prefaced Constantine's Edict of Milan, which politically changed the political and social landscape. Without making it the only state religion, socially it validated it under his patronage that now made it acceptable to the Roman elite, for as the emperor worshipped, so did the empire. The wealthy and influential, the ostracized bishops and freemen and slaves alike were now allowed to join. The unity that Constantine sought within the empire would create fertile social soil for the spread of a community or social religion. So in the space of about 25 years, what was once a persecuted people had now become the emperor's people. They had moved from outcast to the social and political elite. Constantine's patronage led to a strengthening of church, but also its relationship with the state, where the church relied on the state for protection and the church relied on the state for support. Politically, the union could be observed in the return of lands, reparation, freedom of worship, and promotion of clergy to civic judicial responsibilities. This symbiosis is best seen in the way he used the state apparatus to bring together the bishops to resolve the Arian conflict, among other issues, at the Council of Nicaea in 325. More dynamically, he actually imposed himself into the religious arena as a referee and ultimately as a theologian. The homoousios statement is inserted as an attempt to find common ground between the two factions. This not only solidified the relationship but made political forays into church affairs acceptable. A side effect of him only inviting bishops to the Council of Nicaea meant that Arius, who started the controversy and being a presbyter, was not invited. This therefore showed the imperial position of agreeing with the already existing hierarchy of bishops above presbyters. It also set in motion the possibility for officially adopting a single bishop to head the church. Later, as the empire waned, the church would adopt a political hierarchy of its own, and this apparatus would fill the political void in the 5th century.
Constantine passed away in 337 AD, and on the surface, it's logical to conclude that that was the end of his input on church matters. However, his influence extended beyond the grave, and most notably in the very thing he sought to bring closure to, the Arian crisis. Even though most of the bishops present signed the creed issued at Nicaea, lingering doubts about the wording continued as to the exact meaning of homoousios, and factions arose. Soon, 4 classes of definitions emerged: homoousian, which meant Son of Man has the same substance as Father; homoousian, Son is similar in substance to Father; homoian, Son is like the Father; and anomian, Son is unlike the Father. Athanasius in particular would address the issue, but Constantine's successor, 56 years later, Theodosius I, also called a council to deal with this issue, and to it issued a creed in its present form. In all, 7 councils would ensue. Another lasting impact that he had was the institutionalizing of unbiblical observances and ceremonial days. The day of the Lord would become so ingrained in the religious psyche that not only historical remnant would continue to practice the biblical Sabbath, but all walks of life would change. Easter would be celebrated according to the Roman Church, and other pagan intrusions would become part of the Christian calendar, notably Christmas, although he himself would not insert that. Church governance and polity would take the same form of Romanism, namely a single bishop or pope elected by cardinals and archbishops in a hierarchical clergy. This would become entrenched. His legacy would also be felt in the construction of basilicas, church design, and aesthetics. He originally commissioned new basilicas to be built and decorated with the finest using state funds. This tradition would continue under the Roman Church, and its papal headquarters is a classic example of that. The argument that Christian symbolism would become his stamp is inescapable. His mother would found churches on holy sites like the Church of the Nativity, the Church on the Mount of Olives, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. These were all funded by her powerful son. Some theorize that the depiction of Mary and Jesus as mother and child are actually Constantine and Helena. The construction of the city of Constantinople occurred in his lifetime and became his final resting place, with a fine basilica which would act as his mausoleum, with representations of the 12 apostles and himself in the center as the 13th apostle. This largesse, financially and theologically, helped fuel the speculation about his spiritual motives.
The man continues to inspire strong debate whether his conversion was real or not. Emperor Constantine, friend or foe, you decide.